Good evening, everyone. Welcome to DevOps Vancouver Meetup. My name is Andrzej Kamiński, and together with Alison Bennett, I am co-organizer of this event. This is the last session before summer, and we'll resume again in September with a very nice and exciting lineup. Today's session is dedicated to coaching. Coaching is hard in Agile, but even more harder in DevOps. And there are many reasons for that. If you think about definition of DevOps, it is mainly about breaking barriers between developers, business, and operations. And often they are driven by different set of drivers. We do this through change in the culture, automation, lean processes, and measurements. It requires a lot of coaching and a lot of influencing. So I'm looking forward to today's session to learn how we can actually help our teams to progress in the maturity and levels in DevOps. So I'm going to hand over to Alison to introduce the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre, and hi everyone. I'd like to welcome first of all, our first speaker tonight is Muneeb Shaukat. Muneeb has worked across the globe in various industries, managing and delivering digital transformations and agile software solutions. He started his career in software research at Bell Labs, and he followed that by research at various universities, and later he worked for various digital consultancies. He's worked in nearly all roles related to software delivery, and currently he's an Agile coach with WorkSafe BC. Tonight, Muneeb will be discussing Agile success stories across continents and domains. So welcome, Muneeb.
Thank you, Alison. Cool, so let me just see if I can share my slide deck.
If I could add as well, the audience has ability to ask questions. There's a Q&A section, so during the presentations, please feel free to ask questions, and we'll respond to those questions at the end of the session.
Thank you. So the idea behind this session was when I was asked, and by the way, special thanks to Andre and Alison to enable us to do this. Is the idea behind this was to understand what made Agile a successful contributor across different projects. So Alison has already introduced me to extent, so I'll just add to that. So over the years, I have worked from research to consulting firms, and when I say consulting firms, I have mostly worked for Accenture, Deloitte, PwC, PA Consulting, so all those organizations. And within those organizations, I have worked across different levels, different in CIO advisory, where you do advice to the senior CIOs, CTOs, and CFOs. Worked in digital sector as well, so Deloitte Digital and then PwC Digital. And above all, I have worked in mergers and acquisitions where I got to see the other side of working, where what motivates things to be done. Currently working as an Agile coach at WorkSafe BC, and it's an excellent opportunity for me. So again, very grateful to WorkSafe BC for providing me with that opportunity. So the reason I was explaining my background is important to understand that I have been able to understand different cultures, different domains, and different ideologies behind Agile. So it has helped me understand what makes a successful project, what doesn't make a successful project. Obviously, I don't have a golden key which allows me to do that, but at the same time, there are drivers, there are factors which contribute to success overall. So before we delve into some of my key thoughts or key suggestions, so what I thought would be a very interesting point was, let me present to you the best project so far that I have done, and in the consulting career especially. So I'm obviously, because of for legal reasons, I can't name the clients, but it was a very awesome project. So the industry was a travel industry related client and a holiday company. And believe it or not, they are very, very technically complex because they have to do a lot of search engine integrations and searches across the web. And each search costs a lot of money, so they are a very complicated technical organization. Location was in the middle of nowhere, and I remember this particularly because one of the options for me to work was in Miami with a client who was on Miami Beach versus somewhere in the middle of England industrial area. So that's the location. So the brief that we got for the project was that the management called us and said that we have invested a lot of time and money and effort in building our DevOps practice. We have invested a huge amount of money in infrastructure. We have waited for the teams to go through their formation processes. We have hired the best resources that the money could get, and we are still not getting the results. Go solve it. Simple. So initially, we went in with a strategy that we will go in and see who the performers are, who the underperformers are, do a little bit of organization and reorg of the teams, and let's see how, and Bob's your uncle. So that was the main idea. However, when we landed at the client and when we started meeting people, quickly turned out that that strategy wasn't sufficient enough. So there came a revised strategy. Doing team health assessments, reviewing the implementation of Agile principles, again and again, making sure that the Lean and the Agile principles are followed in a spirit, really led us to understand what the situation was. The initial frustration was that everyone in the team was very good. So whether you went to a technology person, they were really the state of the art, very high caliber individuals. And if you went to the business, they were really nice, equally individuals. But doing these team health assessments and regularly ingraining ourselves across these this organization came as a very, very significant result, which was that senior management understood Agile as a methodology, but they did not understand the Agile practices. They still wanted waterfall. Their projects were still running in a yearly cycle. So once the budget was approved, that was always the case, and the project would continue, and you were not allowed to move away from your milestone plan. Two-way communication and dedicated product owners ensure business and engineering are aligned. So one of the other issues was because the product owners were very busy, they did not have enough time to give the teams, and they had a little bit of delegated product managers who would answer business questions, but they were not really in charge of making business decisions. So all these delays caused a lot of problem. So what happened next? We managed to get a very good repurposing of their roadmap. We worked with the senior management to understand the key point that the idea of fail first ideology is very important to understand. So the whole idea about design thinking, that you ideate, then you do a prototype, and then you measure your success initially before you embark, was inculcated in the culture. And the business actually did very well, and they managed to increase 20% of their revenue sales in a single year. And that was just because of their online business. So that was one case. So the reason for this case study is to give you a background of things to come. So let's see. So the next project. So because I chose example in the travel industry, so I thought I'll stick with the travel industry. We did a project with a travel company, and this time the locations were absolutely amazing. So they were based in Dubai, they were based in Mallorca and South Korea. And they were absolutely wonderful places to visit and live. And it was a very small organization that started as a startup and then started to grow exponentially. They had acquired companies across the globe, so they were based in South Korea, Dominican Republic. Spain was their main development hub. They also had a development hub in Romania and Dubai as well. So the problem they had was collaboration. So individually, their teams were performing very well. So different teams, and as I mentioned, the products are very, very complicated. So for example, a certain team is working on a search engine, whereas the other team is working on finding the price engine. All these things were done in different zones. And the issue came when they started integrating the products, and the products would never integrate. We were told that we have 3 months, and the CIO was very impressed with Spotify and Netflix, and he wanted us to implement one of their models, pick and choose, and shouldn't take more time. This should have been our red flag to see why we are given a time of 3 months to do this. But anyways, we continued. So again, now we had learned from the previous project of how to go. So what we decided to do was to go in with a set of health assessments and make sure the teams are working correctly, try to introduce good practices and remove the bad practices. I always try to make sure that I use the 12 Agile principles as the leading light so that I can measure teams' successes on that. However, entering that organization very quickly, it dawned on us that they were not at the maturity level of Agile implementation. In fact, they were even at a level where they were having team building issues. And the idea that we told the management at that time was to support the teams in sort of team building activities, traveling around so that people understand each other's cultures. But biggest of all, they need to introduce tools and working ways and processes that supported Agile ways of working. Because people were working on big code bases and there were no check-in softwares, people working on very, very big files, really stopped collaboration at a higher scale. So what's the result? Certainly not the happy management. It took management considerable time to understand that just by using the word Agile does not mean that you have implemented the Agile. And it takes a lot of time to understand and build trust among the teams and management, and to be at a point where you are actually able to understand. At the end of the day, they did manage to have a lot of investment, and the CFO wasn't a very happy person, but he did a lot of investments in AWS. So they bought infrastructure, which was supportive, because previously the issue was that the servers were based in Korea, and whenever servers were down in Dominican Republic, the teams would call Korea, but by that everyone had gone home. So all these issues were resolved by using the AWS platform. A lot of ways of working needed to be adjusted. Cultural differences were there as well, so we needed to sort that out. Investment in Jira, Confluence, Slack, and other supporting tools was made. But at the end of the day, it took them a very long time, and their initial target of 3 months wasn't the most achievable one. But one of the best things I found, and this is purely an anecdote, when we were looking at different softwares, one of their portals, even in production, had an issue where they couldn't log in. So they had to log in twice with the same username and password, and there was obviously an error. And one of the guys in the management was showing it as a two-factor authentication. So that tells you the maturity of that organization. So what approaches do I think make a lot of sense in coaching? So thinking outside the box is a very cliche term that is used over and over again, and I'm sure you must have heard it all the time as well. But what does it really mean? One of the outcomes that I've seen, obviously, from that case study and many others as well, is that stop following other organizations verbatim. So if you see some organization doing certain things in a certain way, it does not mean that they will work for you. So you need to understand what works for your organization the better. It might be the other organization has a different agile maturity level, or they are better understood, or maybe their resource structure is completely different. Try to understand the bigger picture. So again, the domain and the industry that you're working in, it is very important to see where you are. So for example, if you're working in energy sector, compliance is the biggest key. If you're working in insurance, government sector, again, regulations are a big thing. And this focus tells you how to prioritize your stuff in a better way. And one of the last things which I think is very important is learning and relearning and again relearning Agile over and over again. It's very easy to get into a habit that, oh yeah, I know the 12 principles of Agile, I've got this certification, I've got that certification, but understanding the spirit of items is very important. One of the key things I tell people over and over again is how you are going to manage explaining to a CFO the difference between a waterfall project and an agile project. And that will, so CFO is concerned about the money and the results. And that immediately gives you an idea how agile can help organizations work. So again, this works for me. There might be something similar, but again, try to learn agile over and over again. Work with your teams. Now, this sounds very simple because as agile coaches, scrum masters, and various other roles in the agile team, we always listen to our team, right? In practice, no. When I say listen to your teams, it actually means suggestions coming from your teams, try to implement them, not just listen to them in the retrospective and move on. What went well, what didn't go well, but at the same time, listen to their concerns, address their concerns. It might be a simple thing that can easily increase productivity. So for example, one of the offshore projects that I was working on in a bank, we had a very bad telephone line, and all the conferences that we had were always very patchy. Fixing that small thing, and from feedback that we got from our retro, was such a big success for our teams that the productivity increased massively. Another session that I used to run, especially for organizations who have just started transformation, is a session called Why Agile is Bad. A lot of people coming from existing waterfall methodologies try to think that Agile might not be sufficient enough for their projects or for their organizations. And the reason for running this session is that people who come to the session are only allowed to say why Agile is bad, and then I'll try to do my best to counter those arguments. And in my personal experience, when people start arguing with a free hand, they find that their concerns are addressed and they become much more happy with their agile approach. Regularly run team health check sessions with teams scoring themselves. So this is an exercise that I have continued here in Works at VC as well, and it does give us good results as well. The idea is very simple, that whatever framework that you decide that you want to, or the measures of success that you decide for your team, you ask the teams to measure themselves. What you can do to help them is to define a scoring card to say, okay, so if, for example, if you're at this level, that means give yourself 1 out of 5. If you're at this level, give 2 out of 5, and so on. What you will find is this does two things. So first of all, it allows the teams to actually have a sort of an inner check themselves. And then the teams become very interested on how other teams are scoring. If they score themselves too high, the idea is then they should be the champions for that particular category. And that equally forces the team in a way so that they actually see whether we are the champions or not. Using retrospectives, personally, I am the biggest fan of retrospectives. I think there should be a very sacred meeting, because that's the only meeting where team can very freely express. Teams, you can follow any format you want as long as people are speaking. I think the spirit of that meeting is achieved. Build a culture of ownership rather than a blame. So look, things happen. Sometimes we meet deadlines, sometimes we don't. Building a culture of ownership among teams is very important, rather than saying, oh, this is fault of a tester, or this is the fault of a BA who gave me the false story. The whole idea here is that team as a whole takes ownership. And if something goes wrong, well, tough luck. Team as a whole did that. And taking this ownership actually makes teamwork better, because it shows team that this is something that they have control over. This is something that they own, and as a result, they treat it with more respect. Another important point, which I have seen a lot of times, especially the example in Dubai that you saw, is that coaching, it takes time. It's not a forced activity. You cannot make teams agile mature within days. You can force them to be agile, process mature, but that doesn't work. And one of the key things, example I give people is that I was working in a government organization in UK, and overnight someone came in and the new boss decided to apply Agile the next day. The teams were used to run in a waterfall fashion, and they were always told what to do. And immediately switching to an Agile ways of working, people didn't know what to choose. Well, why should we take stories into the sprint? Because we are not used to taking, we are assigned stories. But again, that is a very hierarchical culture, and it took years of, and they're still actually working on that project. So understand the cultural differences. This thing has actually got me a couple of times, especially when you're working with offshore teams. This is absolutely a point that you need to be aware of. Moving on. Work with business. Try to understand the business vision and question the business vision. It's not only okay that a product owner comes to you and says, build me X, because a lot of times when I ask teams for their vision, the answer that I get is, oh, our vision is to replace this system X or build this system Y. And the answer is, or the question I pose to them is, why? What's the benefit of it? Where does it fit in the roadmap? So ask these questions with the business. Not only will they enable business to answer this question and create an alignment with you guys, but at the same time, it will also enable you to understand the key reasons why business wants to do projects. And this is very important because the vision might have been articulated differently, whereas at heart, the goal might have been different. Now, the next point is a little bit moot, but the idea here is don't be shy to borrow tools from existing project management methodologies. If you are trying to make business decisions, don't be afraid to use a RACI matrix or RAID, because we are agile does not mean that we have to give up on everything we knew previously from the waterfall days. Try to empower your product owners. Try to understand what pressures they are in, but equally understand the role of the team as well. Product owners are not product or team managers, right? This is one of the very important points as well. Empowering product owners. I have seen a lot of time in businesses, especially I worked for an insurance client in Italy, and one of the problems was the team that actually was implementing was Greek, and they couldn't communicate with the product owner. As a result, they had to appoint someone who actually could talk in Greek, and behold, things didn't go very smoothly because a lot of things were lost in translation. And try to build an honest bridge between the PO and the team. If you can't meet the deadlines, you don't have to say always vote yes, we can achieve it. Simply say so. And there should be a level where even the weakest member of the team should be able to go to PO and say, look, I don't have any confidence in this sprint, change. And that is the whole point of the spirit of Agile. Okay, second last slide. So use the right tools and processes. Make sure that the correct technology stack is selected, so developers can work in an agile way. So if you're working in an environment where you have big files, no source code system, it's very difficult to to divide work. It's very difficult to parallel process that information. Ensure that infrastructure is supportive of agile architecture. Again, working for one of the government security organizations in the UK, what we found was they had a mainframe-based system for which people had to physically get the tickets. So you had to book tickets for your SIT testing and UAT testing. How can you actually think of doing agile with that? You can partially do agile, but it's next to impossible. Make sure that you have tools like Jira, Slack, Asdo, Azure DevOps, or whatever the IBM equivalent is, and System One. All these tools are great. I'm not going to make a judgment on them. Testing processes are a very interesting one, and make sure that they are aligned with your agile ways of working. Don't have a 4-month UAT delay where developers have to go back, fix the bugs that they don't even remember. Innovation. So one of the very recent anecdotes that I heard and I thought I would share here. So Einstein was teaching at University of Oxford, and in 1942 he gave an exam to the students. But one of the teaching assistants came back to him and said, "Oh, sir, why are you giving this exam? Because it's the same exam you gave the class last year." And he said, "Yeah, I understand that." And the student said, "But won't the students know all the answers?" And he said, "No, physics has changed." So innovation is not only using the latest technology to build a high product, and especially working from mergers and acquisitions, where I dealt with a lot of startups. No one is trying to make a big Facebook-like or Instagram-like thing. The issue is, in fact, the innovation comes from really, really simple problems that need to be solved. Design thinking is a very valuable tool for your customers. It enables you to see from your customer's point of view. Enable a culture where people are happy to express their ideas without being criticized. A lot of times people are working in the operations are the ones who have the right ideas, but they are too afraid, they are too aloof from the technology to express those ideas, so please involve them. And one of the suggestions is develop an idea filtration process. So this should be a regular meeting cadence in which everyone can come up with, you define certain criteria, certain filters to process your ideas, and build those things, and that really can help. Those were some of the basic ideas that I had. So if you have any questions and answers, please feel free.
Thanks, Muneeb. We're actually going to hold off on questions until just after Shantanu's presentation. We've already got one in for you, and there's a couple of others we've got as well. So just a reminder to everyone, if you do have any questions as we go, post them on the right-hand side of the screen, and we're going to put the questions to both of the speakers at the end. So thanks again, Muneeb. Muneeb's going to stick around, and next I'd like to introduce Shantanu Mangalvedhekar. Shantanu is a certified SAFe program consultant with extensive experience in Lean Agile coaching and Agile transformations. Over the past 12 years, he's worked in various industries and roles, including business analyst, product owner, scrum master, release train engineer, and enterprise Agile coach. Tonight, he's going to be discussing building and leading Agile teams at scale. So welcome, Shantanu.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alison. And you gain a lot of cookie points for saying my last name correct. That was a task, I do understand, but thank you for not messing it up. Awesome, guys. So welcome to this amazing evening today. Thank you, Muneeb, for the amazing presentation. It was fantastic. I learned a lot personally from your presentation. So let me go ahead and share my slide deck, so you guys can look at something else apart from my face. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay, so give me 1 sec. Can someone confirm if you are able to see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. All right, guys. So let's go over it. So the topic for me today is building and leading agile teams at scale. Okay, so going ahead, where does it start? That's the main question. So where do we get started? So if you look at the anatomy of any organism, the basic building block, the basic building unit of that is an atom, correct? So if you look at organization, the goal for us is to get to that atom where we can start this transformation and then scale it up. So for an organization, that building block, that atom is a value stream. For an value stream, that atom is agile release stream. For agile release stream, that atom is agile team. For the agile team, that is the individual. For an individual, it is the mindset. The mindset is where it all starts. So if we can attack that, and if we can change that, then we have a shot at changing the culture of the organization. Okay, so if you look at the picture down here, what it mentions is that once you change the mindset, once you grow from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, and there are tools to help us do that, then we can actually venture into changing the culture of the organization. However, that has to be built. The culture has to be done gradually. It does take time, and at the end, it does happen as well. But it's important to understand that it starts off with the mindset. Okay. So how do we change the mindset now? If that is the atom and that's what we are planning on changing, how do we go about doing that? So let's go back to the basics, right? So as they say that principles trump practices. So anytime you think that you're diverging off the track, go back to the principles. So for us as Lean Agile leaders, the principles that we base our practices on are the House of Lean, the Agile Manifesto, and the SAFE principles, the 10 SAFE principles. Those will always guide you back to where you need to be for you to be on the right track. Okay. So the topic is building and leading agile teams at scale. So let's break it down then. So building agile teams, leading agile teams, and scaling agile teams. That's how we can actually break it down. So building agile teams, there has to be a coordinated effort. Leading agile teams, you do need to be a superhuman for you to actually do that. And the superhumanness in you for that is the lean agile mindset. Okay. And then we go about and we can now scale the agile teams. Okay. So building agile teams, where do we start? So a family that eats together stays together, as we all know. So they're happy eating the amazing stuff, pizzas for that matter. My kid loves that. And then what do? We do this plan, do, check, adjust cycle. And then what we get is the winning team. So for a family that eats together, stays together, a team that plans, does, checks, and adjusts together, wins together. Okay, that's the whole idea. So what is an agile team then? So if you look at the basic definition of what an agile team is, it's 5 to 11 empowered and motivated individuals who are cross-functional and who are eligible, who are equipped with defining, building, testing, and delivering an increment of value. That word value here is really important because that is what should be driving how we go about it. So they are these individuals who can actually define, build, test, and deliver an increment of value every time box. So if that time box for an organization is 2 weeks, that's your increment of value for that matter. Okay. So agile teams, they strive for fast learning. That has to come from that continuous learning cycle. So the plan, do, check, adjust cycle. You do something, you check if it is working, you adjust, you do it again. So, and by doing that, the small batches, we can actually get to an adjustment where we can have a continuous learning cycle going on in that time box. Okay. So the agile teams they're self-organized and self-managed. They are accountable to delivering results that meet the needs and the expectations of the customer. And the customer can be an internal customer or external customer, but that is what they are all striving towards. Agile teams are also accountable to each other and to other teams for delivering the quality of work. So what is it that we are delivering? We are delivering value which has to be of a good quality in that time box by this team. So when such a team is formed who is capable of doing these things, we call it a agile team. Okay, so how do we form an agile team? Okay, so well, it's important to have talented people on the team. the team composition is important, but the more important thing is the team gelling and working together as a team? So if you look at the last statement here, the fact who is on the team has less impact on the team performance than how the team works together. Because every team, as you know, goes through this cycle of forming, storming, norming, and performing. So once it gets to this performing stage, the idea is to keep that team intact. Okay, this goes against the waterfall methodology of putting people onto projects. Here we are working towards converting projects into products, so that we know this is the product, and now let's use the agile release train and the teams on that train to achieve that, because they already know how to work with each other. The team dynamics has already been established. So Teamness Characteristics, I would recommend you guys to go to the Scaled Agile Framework website and have a look at the Teamness characteristics. They're pretty phenomenal, the way they have set it off, and for us to understand what exactly is needed. So if you look at this particular slide, you'll see that the environment for taking risks without being afraid of being punished, the alignment and the shared vision, the clear goals that we need to have, the diversity of knowledge, the mutual trust that needs to be within, and also to allow healthy conflicts. It's not that I have to agree with everything, but it makes sense for me to have that mutual trust so that now I can have a healthy conflict. The reliability, the understanding, the fun of working together, those are all characteristics of teamness. So let's get to the second subtopic, which is leading agile teams. Now we know what agile team is. Now let's get to thinking about how to go about leading agile teams. So while we spend a lot of time and money on the tools for transformation, which is essentially our DevOps practices, our IT practices, we should seriously start investing in coaching and teaching the leaders, because as you understand, the people are the one who use the technology. So even if we have the most amazing technology, if the people are not equipped to lead that change, to lead that transformation, it may not happen. So there are two types. There's the technological competency and there's the organizational competency. So we cannot have the transformation with IT and DevOps without also changing the way the leaders think. It all boils down to the mindset of the leaders as well. So who is a leader? Now that's a great question. If you have ever observed how birds fly in that V formation in the sky, you may or may not know this, but the first guy, the leader, is a person who keeps changing. The bird, which is the fittest at that point of time, who is the least stressed out or the least tired, is the one who takes the lead, because then the other birds can fly in that air span, and they don't have to spend as much energy for them to get there. So that is who a leader is, who can, and also every person on that team can be a leader and should be a leader. That is the whole idea. You're building a team of leaders. Okay. So a person capable of leading himself first, because if I cannot lead myself, how can I lead someone else? A person capable of leading himself by making the decision, committing to the goal, and backing it up with action. And in doing so, inspire the others to lead themselves, facilitates the transformation of a high-performing team of leaders geared towards achieving a common goal. So even though we all are leaders, the goal is a common vision that we all need to follow. Okay. So the goal of an effective Lean Agile leader should be to coach other people to lead themselves, to provide the vision, the leadership, the autonomy for that, and to enable decentralized decision making in the process. So how do I become an awesome Lean Agile leader now? So most people think it has to happen something like this, that I have to go somewhere, get a Kung Fu Karate lesson, and then I have to go about attacking the mindset. It doesn't really work that way. The way to do that is like this, like you have to go sit on top of a mountain, think about yourself, what to do, what am I here for, the essential questions of life. And how do you know that you actually achieved that level of leadership is when you start asking the right question. The questions are, I'm here to help. Okay. Once you get to that level of starting to ask the question of, I'm here to help, tell me how I can help, then you know you have actually achieved that level of being a really good Lean Agile leader. Okay. So there are some ways in which you can do that. The softer the skills, the better the relations, as they say. So work on your soft skills to do that. It's about you building that rapport with the people who you're working with. So some amazing books you can read, something like The 5 Levels of Leadership by John Maxwell, How to Win Friends, Influence People, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. So here's one example of the 5 levels of leadership that John Maxwell talks about. If you observe that people follow you because of what? So if you analyze yourself, most of us will fall here, permission, because they have to follow you, that's why they follow you. But can we graduate towards the pinnacle level where they follow you because of who you are and what you represent? That is the goal for every leader to achieve, to get to that pinnacle level where now people are following you because they respect you. Okay. So dimensions of Lean Agile leadership are you lead by example, the mindset and the principles, and leading by change. Again, I'll refer you back to the Scaled Agile website, Scaled Agile framework website, where you can read a little bit more on this particular topic. The third subtopic, scaling agile teams. Now, remember, this is what we talked about, the atom concept that I was talking about. So it starts off with, if you want to change the organization, it should start off with the mindset. So the mindset goes to the individual, to the agile team, to the agile release train, to the values teams, and to the enterprise, which then changes the culture. So if you go about breaking it out, you will understand that there is a horizontal alignment and there is a vertical alignment. The horizontal alignment is the first part of that sequence, which is the mindset, the individual, the agile team, and the agile release train. So as you know that there are some common principles on which agile release train, we call it the ART, runs on. So the schedule is fixed. That means there is a synchronization happening. The train has a known velocity. So now we can plan how much work that train can do at that point of time. Also, do remember that this train is made up of agile release, the agile release train is made up of the agile teams. So we are basically saying that the teams make up the train, and that's how you can scale up with common synchronization, common cadence, with dedicated people who have already gotten to that performing stage of the teams. With an inspect and adopt workshop where you can look back, you can fine tune, you can do those quick learning cycles and then change where you're going. Develop on cadence, release on demand. Just because you are now developed something doesn't mean you have to release it. That is the business's decision when they want to release it. So DevOps here plays a major role. If you do not have the right kind of automation, the right kind of pipeline setup, this may not work. So that's why DevOps has a big part in the agile methodology as well, where they work hand in hand for us to get to that agility and for us to be make us capable of releasing on demand. So ours deliver all or part of a value stream. So tying it back to the value stream. Okay, so the agile release train goes to the value stream. Now here's where the fun starts. This is where the agile, the vertical alignment comes into the picture. So this is the portfolio level of SAFe, where the value streams go to the enterprise, and that's what is going to change the culture of the enterprise altogether. So this will determine the success of the agile transformation or the failure for that matter. So there are some concepts that are extremely critical for this to happen. They are the lean budgets. Till today, most organizations are based on an annual budget. That is really not going to work going ahead in the future. We do need to shift our thought process, our thinking, our mindset towards a lean budgeting concept. The roadmap, where are we really heading? The portfolio vision. So as the leader of the organization, it's my responsibility to set the vision. Where is this organization heading, so that can boil down towards the people who are going to work towards that. So the strategic themes, the enterprise, and the culture is how we get to changing that. So DevOps is the key, as I was mentioning. So I may have the best car in the world. I may have an amazing body, amazing color, amazing windshield. All of that is great. But if I do not have the transmission in that car, there's no way I can get anywhere with that car. What I'm trying to say here is DevOps is like that transmission of that car. The more effective your DevOps practices, the better your results are going to be. Okay. So there is a principle called CALMR in DevOps. I would refer you back again to the Scaled Agile website, where you can read more about it: the culture, the automation, the lean flow, the measurements, and the recovery. of that. So these are some basic principles on which DevOps is based on, and that is the integral part of Agile. Okay, so going a step ahead now, it's not just about Dev and Ops. Can we actually incorporate all of these other departments that are part of the company, like your operations, your development, your security, your architecture? Can all of these guys come together and work as one? That's the whole idea behind DevOps, and to integrate that with your Agile transformations. So how do we go about it? So there's something called the implementation roadmap you'll find on the Scaled Agile website, where the go safe, once that decision is made, it can either happen because our waterfall practices and we need to change, or we are doing some kind of ad hoc and now really need to scale up and change. It gives you a good guidance as to how to go about it, how to establish the LACE, the Lean Agile Center of Excellence, how to go ahead and identify the operational value streams, how to go ahead and set up the arts, how to go ahead and do your value stream workshops. So all of these are essential parts for you to embark on the journey towards your Agile transformation. So how do we know we are on the right path, right? That's the most important question. So first and foremost is that your art is running as one, with cross-team collaboration happening. Are all of our teams working towards a common mission, towards common goal, which is your value stream? Is the art, which is consisting of all of these Agile all of these Agile teams, are they all collaborating with each other? Are they talking to each other or not? The second important thing is the first proof of success for you to know that it's really working is a complete implementation of the essential safe framework. Once you know that that has happened, then you know that we are on the right path, and then we can scale it up to the portfolio configuration. The Lean Agile mindset is changing and compounding towards a Lean Agile culture. So is this really happening or not? That will determine if your transformation is on the right path or not. Are we starting to get out of the fixed mindset? Are we starting to start thinking of the growth mindset? And then once this happens at the individual level, are we turning towards the culture? Are we building a culture of Lean Agile leadership? Are we building a culture where we feel safe towards working in this fashion? That is the game. That is the whole idea, guys. So I hope this was of some value to you guys, and I was able to add some value today. So with that, thank you, and back to Alison.
Thank you very much, Shantanu. So we might open it up to questions, and we have a few. I might ask the first one to Muneeb to start off with, but Shan, certainly join in and please provide your response as well. This particular question came up while you were discussing AWS, Muneeb. So this is from Srikanth, and he says, what factors influence the management to invest in tools like AWS? Who proposed it, and what was the problem?
So when I said we go on a project, so usually it's a team. So it was our team who proposed it. So it was my technology team. Sorry. I was talking and my mic was on the mute, sorry. Okay, so for travel companies, there is a very important metric which is called look to book ratio. What that effectively means is for every time someone searches for travel, there are a lot of combinations that happen, and they have to pay for those searches. And believe it or not, in different parts of the world, there are different loads that are needed. So for example, in Western world, it is usually 1:50. So for every 50 searches, one person books a travel. Whereas if you go to the Far East, the ratio goes from 1 to 10,000. So 10,000 searches for one actual booking. And AWS is the only service provider for cloud that can handle that sort of a load. So that is the only reason that you simply have to go with AWS. There are other providers which provide high computing power, but then there is a problem called noisy neighbor. So if you have too many machines which have a lot of requirement or CPU usage, then they struggle to work together. So that was the reason for choosing AWS. We proposed it, and yeah, the problem is, as I described, was the noisy neighbor. There's also a technical financial element for AWS, which I won't go into details for, but that is to do something that AWS dedicated instances can be used as a CapEx rather than OpEx.
Thank you very much, Muneeb. Another question now, and that's a question to both of our speakers. When you were working in many organizations and when you were implementing Agile, what were the top challenges that you noticed that were common across all these organizations? Muneeb, maybe let's start with you.
So I think for me, personally, the empowerment of product owners was a very big issue. So there were people who were never able to make decisions on behalf, and the team had to work twice. The second issue which I found was Agile practiced as a waterfall. So people understand Agile, but then they start translating every waterfall feature into Agile. So that is a very, very common thing. And the final thing, which you might not be very, is basically testing, because testing is never considered part of Agile development. And what happens is, I have seen this in various organizations, that 3 months down the line, someone comes in from the business and gives a feedback to the developers. The whole quick feedback cycle is broken. So these are my top 3. Shantanu, you might have different.
Absolutely, those are some of the things that I observe as well. Some more are the lack of like, as Muneeb rightly mentioned, the slipping back into old habits. That's a major one, where I know that these are the new habits that I need to work with, but it's so comfortable to go back to the old habits, right? So it does take effort to change and get out of your comfort zone. So that is the main one that I see as well. But apart from that, the lack of support from the leadership is one major one, which is a major hindrance for your agile transformation. If you don't have that top-down support, that's the first thing. The second thing is, even though they say that yes, I support you 100%, they are not willing to change. That is another thing that we have observed, that the leadership is still in the annual budgeting cycle, and then how can the agile release trains adopt to the lean budgeting cycles? Some other ones are the fixed mindset of some individuals on the team, when they really don't want to change, and they do come up with not so great excuses of not adopting to the new ways of doing stuff. No DevOps is a major concern for most organizations. If they do not have a good DevOps setup, do not have the good DevOps practices in place, they're not using your CI/CD pipelines, it's not going to be as impactful to do this transformation. And of course, the lack of transparency between the levels of the organization. So yeah, those are some of the things that I feel are the hindrances towards this.
Great, thank you. And I like very much that example, or you have to be really brave. I think this was Muneeb who mentioned that. You need to really be brave to do this exercise where you ask your stakeholders or development teams why Agile is bad. Come to that session and actually face that, right? It's actually shows the courage that we in DevOps or as a coaches we need to have. But it's great to really find out what people have, what people are, where the potential concerns they are, and this is most probably the best way to actually address those by facing them, right? Okay, so another question, and I think Shantanu, you were very strongly talking about this, but also Muneeb was talking about this, the mindset. And we know mindset is obviously growth mindset. We want to implement this, and that's actually a goal for every Agile team. How do you know that you actually achieve that mindset? What type of metrics or measures you would say you have as an Agile coach to say, yes, this team or this person, this atom within this team has a right mindset?
Great question, Andre. So from my experience, once they're openly, they can openly talk about their shortcomings, and when they can come up to the agile coach or the scrum master, or for that matter to come for a one-on-one session where they can understand more about how they can contribute towards the team, that's when we can say that they're on the right path towards changing their mindset. Also, the self performance matrix that we have, the self-organization at the program as well as the team level, if they are able to fill it out honestly and determine what are the shortcomings, then we can start thinking about changing those particular parameters. So it starts off with that individual, and then it scales up to the team, and then at the program level as well. So the traditional matrices, which are your fixed scope, your fixed budget, your fixed time frame, those are not really the ones that work in the agile world anymore. So in order to track and measure if the organization is making progress, we need to redefine what is considered success against the new organizational values, and the objectives become an important step towards that. So implementing the new success factors and metrics that support agile values and the customer need becomes the cornerstone. So are we really able to meet the customer's needs, and are we able to deliver the value in a way that the customer is wanting us to deliver? Those are the matrices that we can go with.
Thank you. And Muneeb, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think I completely agree with Shantanu that that is the right way. So metrics are important, but I think equally one of the criteria for measuring success. So I'm more of a soft-skilled person. My approach would be is customer satisfaction at the end of the day, and it's very easy when you have few degrees of separation for your customers, but sometimes we have a lot of degrees of separation from your customer, in which cases it becomes very difficult to measure that success or that output. And I think in that case, you have to slightly rely on your business happiness and the fact the metrics that, as Shantanu mentioned, that absolutely they make sense as well.
Great, thank you. So we got another question. Challenges in integrating agile teams into art in the forming stage. Both of you guys actually work with scaled agile, right? So could you comment on that? Starting with Muneeb.
Yeah, so again, the 4 stages are absolutely normal, and Andre knows that we are going through some of those stages ourselves within various art. The issue that I always see is the biggest challenge I personally see is or the anti-patrons is when teams start comparing story points. That is a big no-no. You should not compare because one team is doing 30, the other one is doing 40. That is a key issue which I have found, not here, but in my previous projects, I have definitely found that. The other issue which I have found is expertise. So sometimes teams have expertise in particular dedicated area, and even within art, what they try to do is become siloed. And I think at art level, communication or collaboration, regular communication can actually challenge that. So I think those for me are 2 very big items in that sense.
Thank you. And Shantanu?
So for me, the training and coaching comes in handy in a big way for us to impart that mindset before we get onto an art at the team level is extremely important. So once we establish that cornerstone of a self-organizing, a self-sustained team, then it becomes a little bit easier for us to transition to the art, for having the inter-team collaboration becomes easier if the teams are first at a mature agile state of mind. So the pre-planning for before we get into the art launch is extremely important, to have Safe for Teams session where we can have the entire room and then they all have the same information relate to them and they have a common understanding of what is expected out of each person on that train. The second one be to have a detailed checklist of what is it that we are expecting from that PR planning session or from that art once it is launched, so that they know what they are working towards. Because without a common goal, without a defined goal, it's not possible for us to march towards art launch. So it's like a Google Maps, right? If you don't enter a destination in the map is not going to tell you the route to get there. So that destination has to come from the leadership. So once that has happened, then we can go about launching that art and taking all the teams up to the art level. Okay. Back to you, Andre.
Great, thank you. One more question. How do you see quality engineering teams and what the role in DevOps implementation?
So I think it's a very good question and a very difficult one to answer as well. So I think in an ideal state, you don't need QAs because the team owns the responsibility for testing and making sure. You have automation engineers who can have automated tests, and then it's part of a development process and self-verification. However, this principle might not be very relevant across all the domains. So for example, if you work in a regulated environment or compliance environment, that might be slightly different. So that might be an edge case. But I think during your phase of getting maturity, there will be a role of QA. But as I said, having a QA should not make your team work in a mini waterfall, where within a sprint, the first day you do planning, the next day you do development, and the third day you do testing, and then over and over again. But it should be a joint effort, and the developers should work with the testers, and the testers should work with the developers to make sure everything is okay.
So for me, the concept of paired programming is an amazing concept that XP has given us and which has been incorporated in SAFe as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be two developers sitting together. It can be a developer and tester sitting together and working towards that story, working towards that value, the increment of value. So if a tester is writing his test cases along with the developer writing his code, that itself is going to add a lot of value towards your QA resources, your automation going ahead. So yes, I do agree that in the long run, the QA role is something that we would like to incorporate with the automation role. But to start off with, there is no harm in having a QA role who understands how to develop test cases, how to write those test cases which are going to fail and eventually pass the developer's code going ahead. So that again boils down to the concept of DevOps, that are we actually on path to building that DevOps culture in the organization that everyone in the team and everyone on the art understands where we are headed. Once that is clearer, then we can go about and determine the progression of the QA role is going to be in that organization.
I've got another question here. Perhaps we could start with you first, Shan. And you've touched on, I guess you've both touched on this a little bit, but it's a good question sort of asked directly. What advice would you give to our members who are just starting their Agile journey? Should they start with Agile first, or with automation and implementation and practices like CI/CD? What would you suggest?
Great question. So I do feel that it is a combination of both. It's not either or, it's both. We do need to start off with both because DevOps is the integral part of your Agile. If you are looking at just Agile and not considering your automations or your DevOps practices, you are not headed in the right direction. So it's a parallel journey, according to me, that we need to embark on this. And the individuals who are stronger in either a DevOps culture or in the Agile culture should come together and help each other out, so they both are at a mature level of DevOps and Agile. so we can progress towards that goal parallelly. So that's what I think.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct, and I think it's the starting point. Even when you take the first few baby steps, the idea behind that is, unless you're aligned and you align your dev and your ops at the same time, the problem is that things are going to go further apart as you go along. So if your technology doesn't support Agile, or if your operations don't support Agile, then it's quite a moot point for implementing it from there. A lot of times what happens is when people start working in technology projects and they say, oh, we'll change the project later or the technology later. The issue is by the time you're at that point where you want to change, there's such a huge technical debt to actually change it that it nearly becomes impossible, and then the patchy work starts.
Is the classic what came first, the egg or the chicken? That's the classic question.
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask. Yeah, let me ask you a provocative question. Why scale Agile? There is actually a lot of organizations, a lot of people say, well, teams should be self-organized, and we can sort it out. They can sort this out themselves. What's your take on this?
Okay, go ahead, Muneeb.
Okay, I have got loads of things to say about it. I can go for another hour. Need a coffee cup. So the idea is, I think I have worked in very big organizations as well. So Saudi Telecom is one example. A lot of banks, Barclays banks and insurance companies, which are massive organizations, and their structure, their hierarchy is so massive that it's next to impossible to go directly working with just the Agile, because if you're working Agile in a small team, that's absolutely fine. But I can assure you, even in the same building where there are 6,000 people and there are 20 buildings like that, you won't be even noticed. So scaled Agile is absolutely the way it goes. I particularly like the way scaled Agile does the portfolio level. So portfolio is very similar to normal PMP-based or PGMP-based portfolio management anyway. So the concepts of value stream is very portfolio-based idea. And SAFe is not very new or very innovative in that particular region. And that's why it's much easier sell to senior management as well. And I think that's why SAFe has done. A lot of times I have seen a combination of waterfall plus Agile, which people use, and I have never seen a perfect execution of that. And it's more or less very waterfall with only 10% of the development team just doing a daily stand-up and calling themselves Agile. So that's my take. But again, I have worked Ministry of Defense in the UK, and a lot of government organizations I've worked across, same problem. And I think SAFe is the only framework. Well, there are other frameworks as well. What my only concern is, it can be a bit too prescriptive at certain stages, but I think, again, using your common sense should never leave you. So that's my take on it.
Absolutely. So great points, Muneeb, and I completely agree with that. So let's take an example. You're building a house. Okay, so I am in charge of building the walls. You are in charge of building to put the windows and the door frames in there. If me and you are not talking, how is that going to work? Right? I'm going to start building my walls. I have no idea where your windows are going to be. I may build a wall right across your window, or you may have no idea when my wall is going to be at a stage where you need to put the window, and you may start putting the window on the wrong location. So to have that alignment between me and you for us to build the right kind of house is extremely important. That's exactly what Scaled Agile does. The heartbeat of Scaled Agile is the PI planning event. That is the one thing that is awesome in Scaled Agile, because that is where everyone comes together. The horizontal alignment between the teams happens. The vertical alignment between the teams and the executives happen. So as the executive, I'm super happy if I'm involved with a safe environment, because I know exactly what to expect from whom at what point of time. And if that is not happening, the teams are going to tell me that I'm not on my path doing that. I need some more time, or I need to change some scope. It's awesome. So for an organization to go from an ad hoc agile to or from a waterfall to an agile methodology Scale Agile has prescribed the step-by-step method, as I was mentioning, the roadmap that they have prescribed. That if you follow that, trust me, you will get to Agile. Okay, which may not happen with other frameworks out there like Less or DAD or Spotify, because that scaling is not as transparent, has not been laid out as simply as it has been laid out in Scale Agile. I'm not saying they're bad, they're awesome. Once that scaling happens, they work great. But for that scaling to happen, Scale Agile proves to be the most effective method. Back to you, Andre.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Shantanu. Thanks, Shantanu. And thank you to both our speakers, Muneeb and Shantanu. We're probably going to wrap things up about now and wrap things up until after the summer as well for our meetup. So we'll be back again in September, I think. Very much look forward to catching up with everyone again then. I really wanted to thank our speakers tonight for your honesty and your enthusiasm and your sharing your experience. It really came across your passion for the work that you do, and we really appreciate you
thank you so much.
Your time this evening.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Andre.
You're most welcome. I might just hand over to Andre to say a goodbye to our members for the summer.
Yes, so again, from me, thank you very much, Muneeb and Shantanu. This was really great presentation, great talk, and great answers to those questions. So this was the last session before summer. We are going to resume again in September. We will have great speakers as well, like today, but we are also looking always for good speakers. So if you would like to share your experience, or your organization has a product that are related in some way to DevOps, please let us know, and we will actually put you in the list for one of the next of our meetups. Now, with this, I would like to thank you again, all the audience. I thank you very much for the questions, and have a safe and great summer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.